All right. Good morning, everyone. Before starting, I would like to thank Ini for inviting me for this incredible conference, for being in Nigeria, and for reconnecting with my continent. Ashish, where is Ashish? Thank you so much for the inspiring speech. Yesterday, I was sharing Ashish's background with my wife. And she goes, why didn't you start a business when you were 15? I was like, I was so busy dreaming about you. And she goes like, that's so sweet. Woman. All right. So thank you so much for being here today. I'm invited to put the tone for this conference. So from now on until the end of the conference, we're going to start the actual discussion of the conference, tackling all the issues, tackling all the good practices and bad practices, and how we can advance them for sustainable Africa. I hope I can tackle the right issues. I hope I can provoke. I hope I can challenge the discussion. And I hope I can be added value as much as Ina expects me to. Leadership, innovation, and sustainability. These are very key words close to my heart. And I started learning about leadership when I joined an organization. It's called ISEC. It's the largest leadership organization in the world. And when I joined ISEC, I remember I was in Poland participating at the International Leadership Conference of ISEC. And there was a speaker whose name is David Polai. He's an international author from the USA. And David was presenting a keynote speech about leadership. What is leadership? What is the best definition of leadership? And how can we become a leader? And he told us a very nice and short story. And that story, till today, is the source of my inspiration in my daily life. And guess what? This story is inspired from Africa. So the story goes this way. David has a friend. This friend is a researcher. He spent more than 15 years of his life meeting politicians, business leaders, academics, researchers, and he was asking them two basic questions. What is leadership and how can I become a leader? None of them gave him the best answer. None of them gave him the best definition that could fulfill him, that could inspire him. Then one day he met a friend of him in Belgium, and he asked him the same question. What is leadership and how can I become a leader? That friend told him, if you want to get the right answer for this, go to Kenya. There is a village there. That village has a mountain. Climb that mountain, you will find a normal Kenyan man sitting there, smoking his pipe, asking him these questions, and he will give you the right answer. I was like, are you kidding me? Why would I go to Kenya and climb a mountain to find an old Kenyan man giving me the best answer about leadership? I was like, go, you will see. I was like, fine, I will go. I've never been in Kenya, I will travel to Kenya, and then I will see if I can get the best answer. He flew to Kenya, he went to this village, he climbed the mountain, and he found a old Kenyan man sitting there, smoking his pipe with his stick, and he asked him this question. He told him his story and he asked him this question. How can you become a leader? What's the best definition of leadership? And the old Kenyan man looked at him and told him, if you want to become a leader, grab things from the bottom and take them to the top. Grab things from the bottom and take them to the top. Our continent, Africa, is in need for a bottom-up transformation of leadership. A leadership that promotes a better way by challenging others to think differently and innovate. A classic leader takes charge of his team and directs their effort towards finding a solution for a goal. A bottom-up transformation leadership simply creates a better and effective way to solve problems. We are in need for such a transformational leadership that causes change in individual and social systems. A transformational leadership that enhances motivation, moral, and performance of followers through a variety of mechanisms. A transformation leadership that inspires ideas and innovation. And guess what? This transformational leadership has to come from within. It has to come from the Africans themselves. Do you know this guy? This guy, his name is Andrew Garcia. He He's the founder and CEO of Good African Coffee from Uganda. He was in a meeting with one of some investors, and they asked him, what would you like to do? And he gave them a very short and precise answer. I would like to put an African coffee product in African supermarkets. But the fact that you're here to invest in Africa, you have to appreciate the need for African products to be sold in African supermarkets. These are value-added products. Then they told him, what are you bringing to the table? He told them, I'm bringing passion, commitment, and dedication. I will commit to put the best coffee in your shelves. And I will commit to do what I committed to do with the farmers and their communities. I will use 50% of the profit of this coffee to transform the farmers and their communities through innovation and sustainable practices. We either grow together or there is no need for investment. Ladies and gentlemen, a transformation leadership has to come from Africa. It shouldn't come from abroad. No one would understand the African communities better than we, the Africans themselves. It's time. It is time to roll up our sleeves and kick off a thinking process on how better we can activate the transformation leadership in Africa. China and India had their time. Now it's time for Africa. Said so Shakira. Economies in Africa have been growing more rapidly in recent years than at any time in the modern history. Between 2001 and 2008, African economies grew at an increasing rate, averaging 6% of the last period. In 2010, the average economic growth rate across the continent overtook Brazil and India. This rate of growth and development is the first time recorded in recent history and has the potential for lifting millions of Africans and millions of community issues around. However, this is not just the volume, it is not just the volume of development that determines growth. It is also how business is done which impacts the people, the environment, the communities, and social issues. It is time for Africa. Africa has become a power on its own right. This continent of over 1 billion people now reaps more success and growth, but still confronts the same many old challenges. First, it brings opportunities for growth, it brings opportunities for innovation, and it brings opportunities for social enterprises. Back in 2008, companies that ranked high in their CSR index were the least affected by the economic crisis, and this was proved globally. The economic crisis has greatly influenced and shaped the way we strategize our business models, and we have learned 3 key lessons from the economic crisis. 1, a paradigm shift that changed from short-term organizational planning towards a more strategic and long-term vision that should be driven by transformation leadership. 1, transformation leadership. 2, innovation stood out to be a key solution in order to optimize resources, cut operational costs, and sustain business in the future. 2, innovation. 3, business recognized that they cannot function independently, and there was a greater need for inclusive behavior to create shared value with the surrounding community to ensure sustainable growth. So 1, transformational leadership, 2, innovation, 3, sustainable growth. Every year, corporate sustainability and responsibility leaders, they gather together in forums and conferences to discuss what are the key trends in sustainability industry globally. So what are these key trends globally in 2013? 1, an increasing technology, an intersection of technology and sustainability. Across industries, technology is being utilized to find operational management efficiencies and drive sustainability into purchasing practices. These advancements allow companies to look at real-time data of a host issues such as carbon and water use to make immediate recommendations that will conserve resources. That's the first sustainability trend globally. 2, leveraging employees to implement sustainability. Corporate sustainability is less about the size of the staff and more about how people across the company are embedding sustainability within the core business of their organization. A trend has begun to make sustainability a part of performance evaluation in an attempt to drive sustainability throughout an organization. Companies now link sustainability as part of their review process. How a company integrates sustainability management will help a large-scale change within the organization itself. By working with key groups, such as human resources, sustainability become integrated into the corporate cultures. The third global sustainability trend, sustainable supply chain. And we talked about it in some of the key speakers, or with some of the key speakers here. The average citizen may understand that a sustainable chain is, or supply chain is supplying resources and products. It is essential to understand that the supply chain in effect tied closely with the product life cycle and has elements beginning with the energy production, continuing through the entire procurement of raw materials and information leading to advancement of knowledge and ending with the customer. And this is a growing sustainability trend right now, sustainable supply chain. 3, investors and shareholders are getting into debate. Companies globally reported that they are receiving an increasing number of sustainability-related inquiries from investors and shareholders over the past 13 and 12 months, many of which now view corporate sustainability issues as material to shareholders' value. The fifth global sustainability trend, managing consumption, and this is very serious, ladies and gentlemen. As our growing global population consumes more food and energy, businesses are competing for fresh water. It is predicted by 2030 that the global demand for fresh water will exceed supply by 40%. And this is very, very risky and very serious. Businesses and governments are now going to face the serious issue of water shortage. On the other hand, as developing countries are industrializing rapidly, the global demand for material resources is increasing dramatically. Business is likely to face increased trade restrictions and intense global competition for a wide range of material resources that become less easily available. And the last one, show me the dollar sign or the return on investment, ROI. Return on investment is becoming a deciding factor in sustainability programs nowadays. Sustainability as a whole can no longer be sold as a primary benefit. Defined metrics like cost reduction, revenue gain, and compliance should assume primacy, as well there will be a challenge for accepting the sustainability agenda within the corporate sector itself. These are the global sustainability trends. So what are the main sustainability issues that are facing the continent and facing you as a private sector today in Africa? 1, there is a need for higher accountability and social impact measurement. Social investment is only sustainable if organizations manage to prove its value to the financial bottom line and quantitatively measure the social impact in the community, environment, and economy. If the true economic value of social investment is demonstrated clearly, then social investment provides a standardized platform to communicate to shareholders. Measurement of social programs is still not explored yet in Africa. Companies have yet to put large effort into advancing their social measurement techniques to demonstrate the value created out of their social investment. We can't keep throwing money in the community and claiming that we are driving a sustainable investment in the community. We can't do that. And we see that in all the reports right now, everywhere. That's a bad practice in the sustainability industry. It's time to start measuring out the impact versus throwing money in the community and claiming that we are doing sustainability in the community. 2, sustainability reporting and disclosure practices. And these might come as a surprise as everybody wants to report in the market. However, companies are misguided of the benefit of reporting, as it is currently used as a more of a PR exercise than a tool that helps transparency, internal performance tracking, monitoring and evaluation, and one that has a longer lasting impact in the market. 3, and I'm talking the basis here. I'm talking about the corporate sector reality in Africa. CSR integration and governance. CSR integration remains to be a big issue in the continent. Companies are still struggling on how they can integrate CSR into the core business of their work, identifying metrics that capture their organizational sustainability performance. There is no such a thing. That is called sustainability is in our DNA. That's a false statement. Please, if you hear any company saying that sustainability is in our DNA, you better change your perception towards them. I can confidently say that globally there is no company that has managed to integrate sustainability within their DNA. Please change your perception towards them. Okay. And the last issue, the last topic that I wanted to tackle, which is governance role in advancing the sustainability agenda in Africa. Governments at every level globally are beginning to recognize the importance of addressing the challenge of sustainability. Increasingly, the language of sustainability is emerging in the public sector. Coming to grips with the challenge and opportunities of sustainability is an imperative that goes beyond domestic agenda. No country can be an island of sustainability in an unsustainable sea. Equally, no single government or any other organization can easily create economic, environmental, and social value through policy changes and innovative practices if global drivers and reward system are working in the opposite side. And I'm glad today that we have representatives from the government that could engage with us during the discussion to debate all these issues in Africa. At the end, and if anyone is interested to know where do I come from, I'll tell you, I come from a country that held the name of this continent since thousands of years ago. I come from a country that was called Ethiopia. It appears that the continent was named after a group of Berbers, the Afri, who lived near Carthage and traded with the Romans. The Romans called it the Afri Terra, and the Afri, which became Africa. I am Tunisian, I'm African, and I'm proud to be. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please send out a round of applause for the gentleman for our presentation.
Food on innovation within organizations, then we talk at the national level or at the governmental level. And as always, we start with the ladies first, and always we start with the academics to move with to the corporate sector. I would like to start with Professor. So Professor, why do you think that transformation in leadership is different than the other sides of leadership, and that could drive innovation within an organization? What is it different from the other side of leadership?
I think there's a challenge for leaders in all organizations, including politics, moving from being a leader who actually oversees existing institutions, sees leadership as something to do with their own power, and very much keeping old orders in place. I think transformational leadership is basically where people who have whatever power base they have or institutional authority they have recognise that the systems, particularly inside organisations and governments in particular, actually don't work any longer. They're too closed, they do all the opposite things from what Alicia in particular was talking about. To be effective, we need people, particularly in public services, to be much more responsive to changing environments, changing problems, to be inquiring, imaginative, and have the freedom to do so. And if you have a leadership that actually doesn't allow them to do that, doesn't incentivize them to do it, I mean, it's really interesting. I think when the government said earlier on that one of the most important things they did in terms of transforming the civil service was to actually change the way in which people promoted, change incentives. So there's something more to leadership these days than just being a big person. It's actually about changing systems and being somebody who inspires and orchestrates different ways of approaching problems, but also changing the way that organisations run. I think it's also moved from leadership is no longer about running one particular agency or organisation or business. It's about understanding the systems that we work in and being able to cross boundaries, being able to talk to lots of different people, and not being so concerned with building empires, which we do in universities. University education is great, there's a necessity, but I've met lots of very inspiring entrepreneurs like Anish who actually gave up formal education very early, but they're not giving up a sort of more active education of being inquiring about what's going on around them and thinking up solutions rather than thinking about how much knowledge they can acquire in science or, we have to all understand science now, not just people who are scientists. And I think we have to understand all systems as well, so it's going on.
Right. So when do you think, from an academic perspective, when did we start talking about this transformational leadership? It seems to be the trend right now.
Well, actually, I think it's been going for a bit, actually.
Do you think there is a specific context, globally, economic or social context, where did we start talking about transformational leadership?
I think the challenges in all countries now are much, much greater. And I worked in public services primarily in the UK, and really at least 10 years ago we had a number of quite transformative people in the police, in local government. I'll give you one example of somebody I think's been a really interesting transformative leader. She was one of the heads of police in Glasgow in Scotland, where they have incredible knife crime that affects tourism. It means that kids are killing themselves on Sauchiehall Street, which is in the main street. And this woman reduced knife crime by 40% in 2 years with the chief constable bringing everybody together to understand this sort of crime as a health problem. And they renegotiated with kids in gangs and talked to them and how they were courageous, in that they didn't just put in place a new system, they actually engaged with the emotional dynamic, really, of young lads involved in gangs. She did that about 10 years ago.
When you teach people, when you talk about leadership, transformational leadership, what are the key characteristics of transformational leader that you appeal to, that you talk about, that you see them being trending in the global economic context?
I think they think about challenges, they don't think about themselves, they think about what they can do as people committed to change, and that means they have to be close to recognising the problems. And one of the problems we've got, particularly with people who are policy makers across the world, is once they get into positions of power, they remove themselves from the actual realities that we have to address.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Musali, you are pretty much involved with the corporate sector in Africa, and you have been addressing this topic or working with organizations to improve their management efficiencies and to improve the way they think about the business, the way they drive their businesses to create that culture of creativity and innovation. And certainly right now we're talking about transformational leadership, so it needs to be as a tool that drives innovation within an organization. How do you see that happening in companies right now in Africa?
Well, let me tell you at least a little bit of our experience. By and large, though I personally believe in transformational leadership, but because the issue of discipline is paramount, we get the other parallel, which is the transactional way of doing things. Though these two models end up in infinity, but what we do is from time to time you have a tension at the time, meaning that set rules and regulations for the people, which is lacking by and large. So you have 10% of the model brought into the 90% of transformational leadership, if you understand me. And without that, you cannot really go forward. I mean, we're like that, we live with it. So I believe really fully relying on transformation in the relationship is an artistic way of developing the model. You need to put some sets of rules and regulation to keep up the slack. I mean, in everything, even if you are in a construction site, you have delays. In everything, you have delays. How can you recoup these delays? You recoup them by reminding the people that, hey guys, you have sets of rules and regulations. Otherwise, you know, I mean, it's nice to be an idealistic person, an ideal model, but there is a man that you know very well who wrote about the ideal city, Jahez. But did we see an ideal city? I mean, to become an ideal city, you have to be ideal corporate, ideal family, ideal everything. So, in my sincere opinion, my advice to everyone, transformational leadership is great, but the transformational leader should be a transactional leader at the same time. Just 10% transactional and 90% transformation.
10% transactional and 90%
transformation.
This is very exciting actually, because if we talk about transformational leadership, now I can see that there are two approaches for that. The first approach is to put regulations and to work on the policies that would drive that change within an organization. And the second one, which is tied with the behavior of the leader himself, and how he can change the culture within the organization.
No, I mean, what I'm suggesting is actually we have to move from what actually just leaders are like to what they do. And one of the things somebody who's truly transformational does is to ensure that the systems that they oversee reinforce the change that you need to make. And one of the mistakes we made for a long time was to think that transformational leaders were just friendly to people. Actually, they have to change incentives, they have to change HR practice, they have to look at accounting methods. Do we measure what we want? It isn't just a matter of the big inspiration and bringing people together is important, but actually ensuring that new values and a different way of working is enshrined in the corporate services as well.
Right, so she says that things have to move with the processes, with the regulation, with what do we put in place as a mechanism from that transformation of leader to change things and to bring the change to the organization, right?
Yes.
Yes.
I think so, yes.
Mr. B, so would you share the same vision with her, or do you have another point of view with regards to this?
Well, I think that we're in a process now of transitioning from an old economy to a new economy, an old economy that was extremely effective at driving production of goods and delivering them to at least some portions of the world. And during that time, the industrial era, the mass production era, styles of leadership became focused on creating very large, very centralized institutions where power was held at a central point and rules and regulations were disseminated to people, and people gained by being conformist in that culture. A consumer-oriented economy tends to cultivate conformity. It tends to reflect what you would call masculine styles of management, power-centered styles of management. And that led to a tremendous amount of good and a tremendous amount of prosperity. But a couple of generations ago, with the birth of the microchip, with the birth of the internet, with new technologies that have the effect of disrupting the industrial ecosystem, the industrial economy, and transforming it, we now have a new style of leadership that is more conducive to the kind of growth that we need to do right now. And this is where Africa has the advantage, because Africa does not have the embedded, fully developed industrial system in place that needs to be transformed. Africa can leap ahead of much of the rest of the world into this new kind of economy. We see it as a merging of power and purpose. that what was lost in the old economy was that when you had businesses started by folks like Ashish and other entrepreneurs, obviously those businesses had a soul, they had a purpose. When you hear from the great leaders in companies like Hewlett-Packard, they didn't say, well, our purpose is to maximize return to shareholders. They had nothing of that kind of vacuous, meaningless sense of purpose. They were there to contribute something to society, and they made that very clear when they expressed their vision for their companies. Over time, those companies tend to lose their soul. Not entirely, but they tend to lose that sense of purpose. And you know the company has become vacuous when it truly believes that its purpose is to maximize return to shareholders, as if that means anything whatsoever. Profit is a means to an end, it's not the end in itself. So what we're coming into is a time when that vacuous kind of organization is undermined by power that is disseminated much more broadly, in part through these new technologies. Here in Africa, you don't need the infrastructure that we had to develop in the United States. You don't need the centralizing effect of the mass factory production that pulls people out of their communities into new places. Now you have the ability for people at the local level to exercise their own power and to bring that to the fore. And so people locally, empowered through cell phones, through the internet, through LED lighting and super efficient technologies, are able to begin their own enterprises at the local level with soul, with purpose, and to grow them. The style of leadership is going to be more focused on purpose than just accumulation of power. The style of leadership is going to be an integration of the masculine and the feminine, an integration of power and purpose. It will probably involve many more institutions, many smaller institutions, and more local, interconnected institutions, and a different style of leadership to go along with that.
Do you think that this leadership, this transformation leadership, has proven itself to be the driver for innovation within organizations globally?
I think that the combination of the technologies which enables people to exercise that leadership is undermining old power structures. Very slowly, we don't see enough of it happening, but it's undermining old power structures, not to their collapse, but to their evolution. And I think that that's a key differentiator. When I work with activists on all sides of issues, a lot of times the activists want to destroy the old and bring in the new. The problem when you destroy the old is you tend to collapse to a lower level of development. What we're talking about with transformative leadership is not leadership